and we all try to band together, try to help one another, try to get this message out. But ladies and gentlemen out there, it's not too late. You can contact your legislators. You can contact, your lawyers. You can contact everyone. Get on TV yourselves. I mean, this is the digital age. We don't have to go buy from the big stations. We can launch our own things on the internet and on web TV like we're doing here, and let your voice be heard. So you're listening to Bill Edwards, Edwards Law Firm, and MedMal is only scratching the surface. I want people to appreciate how hard it is for a plaintiff lawyer, especially one like Mr. Edwards, who established the first exclusive plaintiff law firm in South Texas, in Corpus Christi, how hard it is to champion these causes. Let's talk a little bit about some other cases that you're working on that also are not a cakewalk in court, because how have the juries changed? How has the perception in South Texas changed? This used to be thought of as a haven for lawsuits,
well,
which is a myth.
I think the juries are just fine. I trust the juries. The problem comes from the Supreme Court, and it trickles down through the other courts. Our Supreme Court is, in my opinion, totally 100% oriented toward big business, big corporations.
I agree.
Drug companies, insurance companies. As Lloyd Doggett said when he was in his dissent, when he was on the Supreme Court, this court has never met an insurance company that they didn't like.
Oh my goodness. And if you look at the stats, like some of the ones we've talked about and some of the other great trial lawyers that I've met with, over 70% in the Texas Supreme Court of the cases that are for plaintiffs get overturned.
Oh yeah.
I mean,
and they changed the law doing it.
Yes.
They legislate.
And now you yourself have had cases that have kind of changed the way legislators and the general public look at, and it can happen again. And I'm trying to be optimistic here, even though in these hard times, people are out there barely scratching out a living, and then you have no recourse in court. If you keep a people down, if you keep a people downtrodden, you can control them. And if you blast them with the media saying that all lawyers are bad, all lawyers are bloodsuckers, don't stay on that message. Remember that you have rights and you got constitutional rights, and a lot of this media hype is just trying to keep a lawyer away from a client and keep the courthouse doors closed. So with that in mind, let me ask you, I mean, you've talked about the Supreme Court. What other stumbling blocks? We know the Supreme Court is there, but let's talk about big business and insurance and the efforts they're trying to do to keep the courthouse doors closed.
Well, here, let's start from the beginning. When this nation was founded, corporations were tools of people. They were not considered persons for purposes of the 14th Amendment, for the Due Process Clause, so that corporations were under control. The railroads back in the 1800s ultimately got the Supreme Court to say corporations are persons. That's where the problem lies. They get every single right that you and I get under the Constitution because they are persons and we are persons, but they're different from us. Corporations have perpetual existence. They never die. You can't put them in jail. When you cut them, they don't bleed blood, they leak money. Until we get a change in the law to where corporations are no longer considered persons for purposes of constitutional law, we're in trouble, because these corporations are allowed to accumulate massive amounts of wealth. And we know that in Washington and Austin and the capitals of every state in this union, that the big money controls.
Well, very well said. And I hadn't even thought about it that way from that historical analysis. It's true. A lot of people don't know that. Corporations are considered not just an entity, but they're treated like a person. And I like how you put that. It's they never die.
That's correct.
And they bleed money. That's all they can bleed. And a lot of people say, what good's money for?
Yeah.
What good is awarding a jury? Oh, it's a person hitting a lotto. Oh, it's a lottery. And how many people would say, I want all that money instead of my father being back, my husband being back, my child being brought back from life? or from permanent injury. I mean, come on, ladies and gentlemen, if you're buying that and the Citizens Against Lawsuit Abuse organizations that put out that message, that's a problem. And so corporations, what have they been doing over the past, since, you know, the railroad? I mean, what have they been doing to try to dominate and control the working class guy that you represent?
They have been eroding the rights of individuals. They've taken the heart and guts out of the Texas Deceptive Trade Practices Act. They've made it virtually impossible for somebody who has a defect in a home they've built to get any relief at all. They put Texas in the position of being only one of 2 states in the nation where if a drug company lies to the FDA and gets a label on their drug approved, that the plaintiff who is injured by that drug cannot go into court and prove that the drug was defective because the warning was inadequate because they lied to the FDA. One of 2 states. Michigan is the other, and Michigan's in the process of changing that. Not here.
Well, I mean, it's politics, power, money, lobbying efforts. You know, what kind of backing do these guys have? Because I think trial lawyers and the unions are about the last backstop for the working person as far as lobbying efforts, as far as trying to talk to these politicians. And I think a lot of the time in the last, gosh, I don't know how many years, it's fallen on deaf ears. They say, oh, the pendulum's going to swing back. I don't know. I mean, more to the point, you've got corporations doing these kinds of things. We've seen only Michigan and us, and Michigan's about to repeal it. So what's going on with Texas? What happened with Texas where we used to protect our citizens? We used to protect the injured, the downtrodden, the elderly. I mean, what has happened over the last 20, 30 years that you've seen?
Well, I think that what has happened is that the folks that are being affected by this are not responding politically. They are not going to the polls. We have a turnout of 30 or 35%. If we had a turnout of 70 or 75%, we could, here in Texas, we could turn that around. We got a good turnout back in November, and things are changing in Washington. We could do the same thing here, but people have to vote, and they don't. You know, you beg them to go vote, and they don't go vote.
And do you think a part of that is that people feel helpless, or they're burned out, or they say, my vote doesn't count?
Well, that's part of it. But our young folks have not been really taught what it means to be a citizen in a democracy like we have. They tend to want to go play their video games, they want to do this, they want to do that. Very few of them become actively involved in the political process. President Obama, on the other hand, was able to energize that group in other parts of the country, not here. Of course, he didn't campaign here very much, but still, we couldn't energize them here. And it's a matter of people understanding that their destiny is in their own hands. They can change this if they're willing.
Well, and one of the things is, yes, get involved. And there's a great site, peopleoverprofits.org. It's one of the sites pushed by trial lawyers, peopleoverprofits.org. Or on my website at floreslawfirm.com, you click Get Involved. Shows you who your legislator is. I had somebody the other day, and they said, how do I get my legislator's attention? And I told them, write a handwritten letter. Sometimes handwritten letters get more attention than the form letters. And because I've talked to guys in Austin and Washington that say that. You know, you talk to media people, and a lot of the time, writing letters does help. Or bringing a group of people and walking up. I've talked to our own legislators, Abel Heredo, Solomon P. Ortiz Jr., and also Todd Hunter, and you go up there, at least they get to see you or the aides. You can go up there and get involved. A lot of people are intimidated by the process. Ladies and gentlemen, we've got to get involved.